Dear all, in our previous lecture, we had seen the different valve actuating mechanisms that are commonly noticed in automobiles. We had seen the different arrangements that are used for controlling the valves and how they operate. In today's lecture, we will see about the flywheel, the construction of the flywheel, how it is made, how the fluctuation of energy takes place in a flywheel, then what all factors affect the size of a flywheel, the stress that is developed in a flywheel, and finally we will deal with small simple problems related to the fluctuation of energy and stress. Now we all know what is a flywheel and what is the purpose of a flywheel. Flywheel actually it is a rotating disc, and the main purpose of a flywheel in general is to store the energy and then use this energy at another point of time. That is the basic function of a flywheel. And it stores rotational energy or kinetic energy. And flywheel actually is a storage or a reservoir, and it stores energy when energy is supplied to it, and it stores the kinetic energy, and when it stores the kinetic energy, the speed of rotation of the flywheel increases, and at a time when energy is needed, the energy is taken from the flywheel, and when energy is taken away from the flywheel, the rotational speed decreases. So you can see that during the rotation of the flywheel, the speed of rotation of the flywheel is not constant. It will go on changing. Sometimes it may increase and sometimes it may decrease. So consequently, there is a difference or a fluctuation in the energy and also in the speed. So there is a point when the speed of rotation of the flywheel is maximum, and there is a point when the speed of rotation of the flywheel is minimum, and the fluctuation of speed is given by the difference between the maximum speed and minimum speed. That is, maximum speed minus minimum speed will give you the fluctuation. Similarly, there will be a fluctuation of energy. There will be a point at which the energy stored will be maximum, and there will be a point at which the energy stored in the flywheel will be minimum, and the fluctuation of energy is given by the difference between the maximum and the minimum energy. Now the flywheel releases the energy that is stored into it by applying torque to a mechanical load, and thereby it decreases the flywheel's rotational speed. So now we will see how the flywheel is related to the crankshaft or the engine parts. So in the crankshaft, in the figure if you see, at the end of the crankshaft, usually the crankshaft will have a hub like this to attach the flywheel. So one end of the crankshaft will be like this, the crankshaft nose, and the other end will have a hub that is machined on the crankshaft, and that hub serves the purpose of attaching to the flywheel by means of bolts and nuts. So we'll be attaching the flywheel to the crankshaft by bolts and nuts. So when does the flywheel gain energy? We know that in a 4-stroke cycle or in a 4-stroke engine, the only stroke which produces power or produces power output is the power stroke or the expansion stroke. So during the power stroke, due to the expansion of the gases in the combustion chamber, high pressure is exerted on the piston. The piston is pushed downwards from top dead center to bottom dead center, and the force is transmitted through the connecting rod to the crankshaft, and the reciprocating motion of the piston is thereby converted into the rotary motion of the crankshaft. So we all have studied that. So while the crankshaft is rotated, high torque is transmitted to the crankshaft, and when the flywheel is attached to the crankshaft, the flywheel gains energy during this power stroke. So the high torque is transmitted to the crankshaft and to the flywheel, rotates the flywheel and the crankshaft together. So once the motion starts, due to the weight of the flywheel and due to the inertia of the flywheel to stop rotation, it will continue to rotate during the next different idle strokes. Idle strokes means the other three strokes which do not produce power, that is the suction stroke, compression stroke, and the exhaust stroke. So even during the idle strokes, the flywheel and the crankshaft will continue its rotation because of the inertia of the flywheel to stop the rotation. Inertia because there is a mass that is attached to the flywheel. So whenever there is a mass that is rotating, it cannot be stopped suddenly without an external force, and therefore it continues its rotation. So the energy that is gained by the flywheel during the power stroke is taken out or is transmitted to the crankshaft again during the idle strokes. So the energy given to the flywheel is taken back for the working of the other three idle strokes. So during power stroke, the flywheel velocity is the maximum, or the speed is the maximum, and during the other three strokes, the velocity will be minimum. So as we mentioned, as the flywheel absorbs energy, the speed increases, and when the energy is released or is taken away, the speed is decreased. So there is a constant difference in speed that is noticed, and therefore there is a fluctuation of speed. Now the flywheel arrangement, as we mentioned, it is like this. We can see a gear teeth arrangement on the hub on the rim portion of the flywheel. So we will study the different portions or different parts of the flywheel. The outermost part is known as the rim. The rim portion has a gear teeth machined on the surface. You will see in detail why there is a gear teeth that is cut or that is machined on the surface of the flywheel, on the rim surface. Now the flywheel is used to maintain the constant angular velocity of the crankshaft. So how does it maintain a constant angular velocity? If the flywheel was not there, the velocity would have been maximum for the crankshaft during the power stroke, and there won't be much rotation during the other three strokes because there is no mass. So if there is no mass, then the crankshaft will not rotate when there is no power produced or power transmitted to the crankshaft. But since a flywheel is attached, the flywheel has a mass, so it stores energy, and due to inertia, as we mentioned earlier, it will continue to rotate, and thereby it rotates the crankshaft. So the angular velocity produced during the power stroke will be again continuing to the other different strokes, the other three idle strokes. So we can see that there is a constant angular velocity being maintained. So the flywheel that is mounted on the crankshaft, it stores energy when the torque is exerted on it, and the torque is exerted because the piston is pushed downwards by the combustion of the gases that is present in the combustion chamber, and this energy is released when no torque is exerted on the flywheel from the pistons. So when we are talking about a single cylinder engine, there is only one piston, so intermittently the crankshaft receives torque from the piston. So a large gap or large time gap is experienced between the time when the crankshaft and the flywheel gets the torque from the piston, because 4 strokes have to be executed by the piston. So after one power stroke, again for the next cycle the flywheel has to wait for the next cycle for getting the next torque. So it is very intermittent in the case of a single cylinder engine. Whereas in the case of a multi-cylinder engine, there are multiple number of pistons, 3 or 4 pistons that are arranged together, and the time gap that is experienced for getting the torque is very less. So we can say that a 4-stroke engine or a 4-cylinder engine is actually has a very lower fluctuation of energy and speed when compared to a single cylinder engine, because there are multiple cylinders and power strokes will be executed on each of these cylinders in a definite order. The time gap is less, so the variation of energy or the fluctuation of energy and speed is lesser, and it is more or less more uniform when compared with that of a single cylinder engine. Now flywheel is actually a very large and heavy disc connected to the end of the crankshaft. At the end of the crankshaft, as I mentioned, there is a small web-like structure, a small hub that is machined on the crankshaft, and the flywheel is attached to this surface, projected surface, by means of bolt and nut arrangement. And another end of the flywheel will be interacting with the clutch disc for engaging the drive to the wheels. So there are multiple functions of a flywheel in an automobile, which we will see later on. And this is why the flywheel is important, because it needs a large amount of torque to rotate. So large force is required to rotate the flywheel, because flywheel is heavy, and once it is rotating we cannot stop it easily. There it also requires a large torque to slow it down. So therefore once it starts motion, it will continue the motion, and slowly only it will slow down unless it is acted by torque from the next cycle. So thereby the angular momentum is conserved very effectively in a flywheel. Now in a multi-cylinder engine, as I mentioned before, the pistons reciprocate and exert different forces and torques at each stage of the engine cycle. And the largest torque occurs during the power stroke, because power is produced during that stroke and piston is pushed down powerfully during that stroke. And the crankshaft gets huge force or huge load during the power stroke. So this load or this force or this torque is transmitted to the flywheel during the power stroke. Now flywheel has a high rotational inertia. Inertia means the inability or the ability of the flywheel or any rotating mass to stop. So it will continue to execute its rotational motion. So thereby it will balance the torque that is being transmitted from the crankshaft to the flywheel. And therefore since flywheel and crankshaft are attached together, they will be rotating as a single unit. So since the flywheel is already rotating and during the next power stroke heavy torque is transmitted again to the flywheel, but this will not cause much of a fluctuation because flywheel already has a high rotational inertia and it is continuing its motion. So as a result, the torque will be balanced out and the crankshaft and the flywheel assembly will be rotating in a more uniform and smoother fashion. So much fluctuations will not be there. So that is one advantage of using a flywheel, that it will balance out the torque delivery and the crankshaft and the flywheel movement will be smoothened. Now let us see the different parts of a flywheel. So here you can see two different pictures, two different types of flywheels. One is a flywheel with a web structure. So web means it is a metallic portion. All these are metallic portions, that is known as the web, and this web connects the outer portion of the flywheel, that is known as the rim, and the central portion that is attached to the crankshaft is known as the hub. So web is the portion which supports the rim and the hub portion together. And the flywheel is usually made up of steel or cast iron. Nowadays it is made up of alloyed steels. And flywheel also acts as a part of the clutch mechanism and fluid drive unit. So one end of the flywheel is attached to the crankshaft by means of bolts and nuts arrangement. So here the crankshaft will be inserted through this hub, and the hub portion will be bolted with the crankshaft. And the other portion which is not facing the crankshaft, the outer portion of the flywheel will be in contact with the other portions of the single plate clutch mechanism. So in case of heavy vehicles we use single plate clutch. So single plate clutch, there will be a clutch plate, there will be a diaphragm spring and outer cover and so on. Many accessories are there. So all these will be in contact with the flywheel portions or the flywheel surface. So flywheel also acts as a part of a clutch mechanism. We will see one more application of the flywheel. So first application and the main application was to create a uniform torque or maintain a uniform torque and thereby a uniform rotational motion to the crankshaft. Second purpose is it will act as a part of the clutch mechanism, and there is yet another different application, that is, as I mentioned, on the rim there are teeths that are cut on the rim surface of the flywheel like this. So the main purpose of the cutting the gear teeth is that the starter motor, the pinion of the starter motor is meshing with the teeth that is cut on the rim surface. So you can see, so the gear teeth that is machined on the surface of the rim in a flywheel engages with the starter motor pinion. So whenever we are starting the vehicle, the starter motor pinion, the pinion that is driven by the starter motor, that is called the Bendix gear, it will retract outside and it will come and mesh with the gear teeth of the crankshaft. And the starter motor, when the gear rotates, the small gear rotates, it will transmit the motion to the flywheel that is attached. So since the gears are meshed together, the starter motor pinion, the gear is meshed with the gear teeth of the flywheel, the motion is transmitted from the smaller pinion gear to the flywheel gear, and it will rotate the flywheel, and when flywheel rotates it will transmit the motion to the crankshaft. So that is how when we start the vehicle actually starts. So from battery the charge is taken to the starter motor, and the starter motor will drive the pinion gear that is attached to the starter motor. The pinion gear will drive the flywheel because it has a gear teeth shape that is meshed with the pinion gear, and the flywheel in turn rotates the crankshaft. So that is another function of the flywheel. So that is to help in starting the vehicle through the motion transmitted from the pinion gear of the starter motor. Now we can see here two figures. One is a flywheel with a web-like structure, as I mentioned before, and these are the flywheels with arms. You can see here the arm structures. Instead of a web portion, there will be arms. So arms are used for flywheels which are much larger in size. Usually in four-wheelers and other vehicles, smaller flywheels are used. So we don't see such type of flywheels used in vehicles. Usually such type of larger flywheels are used for machines, heavy machines like punches, etc., where the heavy load is being transmitted from the punch. So during the rotational motion of the punch, similar to the single cylinder mechanism, the torque is transmitted to the heavy flywheel, and it will help in storing the energy and also giving out the energy during the other idle strokes. So usually these large flywheels are used in machining purposes, such as in heavy punches, rams, etc. So these are flywheels with arms. So normally this is the type of flywheel which we use in vehicles, that is flywheel with web. Now in the construction of the flywheel, we can see that flywheels usually which are smaller size, up to around 60 centimeter or 600 mm diameter, they are casted as a single piece, and the rim and the hub are joined together by web. That is, this is the rim portion, that is the outer portion is known as the rim portion, and the central portion is known as the hub portion. Both these portions are joined together by a metallic region known as the web. If the flywheel is larger, for example like around 2 to 5 meters diameter, so they are very large flywheels usually used for machining purposes in machines, heavy machinery like in large punches and rams, etc., where large force is needed. So in such cases the flywheels will be very large, and they are made up of arms to prevent deflection. And the number of arms depends on the size of the flywheel and speed of rotation. Now there are also flywheels which are larger than 2 to 5 meters. They are very large flywheels. So such large flywheels, they cannot be manufactured as a single unit. So what they do is they manufacture the flywheel, such large flywheels, they will be casted into two pieces, manufactured by casting in two pieces, and then these two pieces will be joined together to form a single flywheel. So such flywheels are called split flywheels. So one half of the flywheel will be manufactured by one casting process, and the second half will be again manufactured by a similar casting process in another die, and then these two will be bolted together. So and after bolting it will form a single unit, that is known as a split flywheel. Split flywheel again not used very commonly. It is used only for very large machineries and in case of very heavy engines. And the advantage is that since it is made up of two different materials, or it may be made up of two different materials or materials which are not joined together, so there won't be any shrinkage stresses in the arms due to unequal rates of cooling of the casting. So two castings won't be cooling at a similar rates, so the stresses that are built in the material will also be different. So there won't be any stress concentration, and thereby the failure of the metal does not occur. So split flywheel, that it has the advantage of shrinkage, relieving the shrinkage stresses. But as I told, it is not much commonly used, and therefore not at all used in the case of automobiles. So automobiles, we may usually make use of the smaller type of flywheels which has a web structure. Now let us see the fluctuation of energy taking place in a flywheel. So why is there a fluctuation of energy? I had mentioned it earlier itself, because there is a change of speed and there is a change of energy in the flywheel at different points of time. During the power stroke, or when the energy is supplied to the flywheel, the energy will be maximum. The stored energy in the flywheel will be maximum. And when this energy is used up by the idle strokes, then the energy of the flywheel will be minimum. And there is a difference between the maximum and minimum energy, and this difference is known as fluctuation of energy. So in a single cylinder engine, the fluctuation of energy will be very high because the time gap between the power strokes in different cycles will be large. Whereas in the case of a multi-cylinder engine, there won't be much time gap between the power strokes in different cylinders, and therefore the fluctuation of energy is not very much when compared with the single cylinder engine. Now let us see the equation of the fluctuation of energy in a flywheel. If E1 represents the maximum energy of the flywheel, maximum stored energy of the flywheel, E2 represents the minimum energy of the flywheel, then delta E is the change in energy or the fluctuation of energy given by E1 minus E2. The maximum energy E1 is given by the equation half I omega 1 square, where I is the mass moment of inertia and omega is the rotational speed. So omega 1 represents the maximum rotational speed, omega 2 represents the minimum rotational speed. So maximum energy is E1 is equal to half I omega 1 square, minimum energy is E2 is equal to half I omega 2 square. Mass moment of inertia, we know the equation I is also given by I is equal to mk square, where m is the mass and k is the radius of gyration. Now delta E is represented as the difference E1 minus E2, that comes to half I omega 1 square minus half I omega 2 square, or we can write it as like this: half I can be taken as a common factor into omega 1 square minus omega 2 square. So this equation omega 1 square minus omega 2 square, similar to a square minus b square, we can write it as a plus b into a minus b. So that is written here, half I into omega 1 minus omega 2 into omega 1 plus omega 2. Now the mean rotational speed omega is equal to omega 1 plus omega 2 by 2. So therefore we can write omega 1 plus omega 2 is equal to 2 omega. Taking 2 to the right hand side, we can get omega 1 plus omega 2 is equal to 2 omega. So we can substitute that here. So this equation becomes half I into omega 1 minus omega 2 into 2 omega. So this is given here, omega is the average speed, omega 1 plus omega 2 by 2. So we get this equation, omega 1 minus omega 2 into 2i into half I into 2 omega. Now again we can write this equation as change in or the fluctuation in energy delta E is equal to I into omega 1 minus omega 2 by W into omega square. So this 2 and 2 will get cancelled, so it becomes I into omega 1 minus omega 2 into omega. So that is again written as omega 1 minus omega 2 into omega is written as into omega square by W. So one omega was already there, so we multiply one more omega by W. So here the omega by W is the coefficient of fluctuation of energy represented by small k suffix s. So coefficient of fluctuation of energy, it is defined as the ratio of the average speed to the work done per cycle, or the work stored per cycle. So omega 1 minus omega 2 by W, W is the work done or the work stored per cycle, into omega square. So we write W by omega as Ks. Sorry, the W1 minus W2 by W as Ks. So the fluctuation of energy is actually defined as the difference between maximum and minimum rotational speeds to the work done per cycle. Omega 1 minus omega 2 by W is represented by Ks. So we get this equation as delta E is equal to I into Ks into omega square. So this is the expression for change in the fluctuation of energy. Again, we can write different modifications of these equations. The previous equation, this equation, a basic equation can again be written as delta E is equal to half into mk square into omega 1 square minus omega 2 square. So mass moment of inertia mk square, again substitute the value of I is equal to mk square in this equation, we get it like this. So take the k value inside, so we get here delta is equal to half m into k omega 1 the whole square minus k omega 2 the whole square. Now k omega 1 is equal to v1 and k omega 2 is equal to v2, where v1 is the maximum tangential velocity at the radius of gyration and v2 is the minimum tangential velocity at the radius of gyration. So tangential velocities are represented by v1 and v2, and then we substitute the values of v1 and v2 here. So we get delta is equal to half m into v1 square minus v2 square. So these equations can be used to represent the fluctuation of energy. First equation is this, delta E is equal to half I into omega 1 square minus omega 2 square, or we can write delta E is equal to half I into Ks into omega square, where Ks is the coefficient of fluctuation of energy. And again another equation we can write it is delta E is equal to half m into k omega 1 the whole square minus k omega 2 the whole square, which can again further be simplified as delta E is equal to half m into v1 square minus v2 square. M is the mass and v is the tangential velocities. v1 is the maximum tangential velocity, v2 is the minimum tangential velocity. So these are the different expressions which we can use to represent the fluctuation of energy in a flywheel. Now how can the size of the flywheel be related to the expression? You can see here the flywheel will be heavy and large size if delta E is large. So if the fluctuation of energy is found to be very large, the flywheel to be used should be very heavy and large. Now we cannot change the value of coefficient of fluctuation of energy, that is Ks. We cannot vary that limit beyond a certain limit. It is limited by practical consideration. So we cannot vary the value of Ks beyond a certain limit. Therefore, larger flywheel will have to be used in case when delta E is large, because if larger flywheel is used, it means the mass will be higher. So if more fluctuation of energy is there, then to balance that fluctuation of energy, you will have to adjust the mass of the flywheel accordingly. See the equations here. In all these equations, you can see the mass factor is there. So if fluctuation of energy is very high, we cannot vary k beyond a particular value. The value of Ks cannot be varied. So we have to vary the value of m. So if we are varying the mass, means the size of the flywheel and the weight of the flywheel or mass of the flywheel will be varied. So for higher fluctuations, larger flywheels will have to be used. So in single cylinder 4-stroke engine, as we mentioned, the fluctuations will be very larger because the time interval between the different power strokes will be large. So the variations of the fluctuations will also be large. So due to that, larger flywheel is required to balance the intermittent torque or the fluctuations caused in the crankshaft of a single cylinder 4-stroke engine. Whereas in a multi-cylinder engine, since there is not much gap between the different power strokes in different cylinders, the fluctuation will be lesser. So we don't need that much larger flywheel in case of a multi-cylinder engine. So in a multi-cylinder engine, we need only a smaller flywheel because the fluctuation of energy will be lesser. Next, for a slow speed engine, that is if omega is less, again the flywheel size required is larger because of the high value of the moment of inertia that is required. So if the rotational speed is lesser, and here in this equation we can see rotational speed omega is less, Ks value we cannot vary beyond a certain limit. So the only factor which we can vary considerably is the I. I is the mi that is equal to mk square. Again, the value of m can be varied. So only the variable factor that is occurring in such equation is the value of mass. So if you are increasing the mass, means the size and the mass of the flywheel will have to be increased. So for a slow speed engine, flywheel size required is larger. High speed engine, again the reverse of or the converse of this statement will be true. That is, for high speed engine, size of the flywheel need to be considerably smaller because the value of I has to be, or the moment of inertia has to be maintained lower. So high speed engines, the size of flywheel will be less. Then if a system can tolerate higher speed fluctuations, size of the flywheel will be smaller for the same value of delta I. Suppose we have two different engines or two different systems in which one system there is a higher fluctuation and another system also there is higher fluctuation, but it can be tolerated, it can be accommodated. So in such cases, if we compare the size of the flywheel in these two systems, then for the same value of fluctuation of energy will be the same in both the cases because difference between maximum and minimum energies will be the same, but the second system has the capability to tolerate higher speed fluctuation. So in that case, the size of flywheel required for the second system will be lesser. So these are the different factors which affect the size of a flywheel. That is the number of cylinders that are accommodated in the engine. If it is a single cylinder, it requires a larger flywheel. If it is a multi-cylinder engine, it requires smaller flywheel. If the fluctuation of energy is large, then it requires a larger flywheel. If the fluctuation of energy is lesser, it requires a smaller flywheel. For slow speed engine, higher or a larger flywheel is required. For a high speed engine, smaller flywheel is required. And for systems which can tolerate the energy or the velocity, the speed fluctuations, the size of the flywheel required will be lesser. So these are the factors which determine the size of a flywheel. Now we come to the stresses that are acting on a flywheel. There are mainly two stresses or two types of stresses that are commonly acting on a flywheel. One is the tensile stress and the second is tensile bending stress. The flywheel, as I mentioned, consists of a rim, which is the outermost portion of the flywheel, and it is a major portion where the weight of the flywheel is concentrated. Then we have the central portion or the hub portion, boss or hub, which is used to fix the flywheel to the shaft, and the portion which supports the rim and the hub or the boss, that is known as the web portion, which supports the rim portion to the hub. Web is used in case of smaller flywheels and arms are used in case of very larger flywheels. So usually for our case, in case of internal combustion engines, we use a web type flywheel. Now let us see in detail what are the expressions for the stresses that are acting in the flywheel. The first type of stress acting in the flywheel is tensile stress, and the tensile stress is produced mainly due to the centrifugal force. Now, centrifugal force is caused due to the reason that, as I mentioned, the rim is the most the rim is the portion where most of the mass of the flywheel is concentrated. So when we are rotating a mass with higher mass at the outer end or the outer surface, always a centrifugal force will be produced. Suppose you are tying up a mass on a rope and rotating it, we know that there is a centrifugal force acting on that rope. Similarly, in this case also, a centrifugal force will be acting on the flywheel. And due to the centrifugal force, a tensile stress will be created on the flywheel. Now, we assume that the rim is unstrained by the arms, which means that the rim is not strained or connected, or it is constrained by the arms. So we can write the expression for the tensile stress Ft as Ft is equal to m or rho density rho r square omega square, where rho is the density, r is the mean radius of the flywheel, and omega is the angular speed of the flywheel. So rho r square omega square. So we know that v, the linear velocity, is known as linear velocity is equal to r omega. So we can also write this expression as rho v square. Now the dimensions are given here. Density is kilogram per meter cube. V, the linear velocity, is in meter per second, and the tensile stress Ft will have the units Newton per meter square. So that is the tensile stress that is caused due to the centrifugal force. The second type of stress is the tensile bending stress, and it is caused due to the torque transmitted from the rim to the shaft, or it can also be the torque transmitted from the shaft to the rim. So we know that due to the rotational motion, during the rotational motion, we know that the flywheel is attached at the center to the crankshaft through a hub, and a torque will be acted upon to the flywheel from the crankshaft and also from the flywheel to the crankshaft. So in both ways, a torque will be transmitted, and due to this transmission of torque or moving of torque, it causes a tensile bending stress in the flywheel. The arms or the web portion of the flywheel is actually constrained, or it acts as a beam that is fixed at both the ends, because two ends are fixed. Here we can see in the picture here, the web portion or the arm portion is fixed at the rim as well as at the hub. So one end of the arm or the web is attached with the rim and the other end is attached with the hub. So it acts as a beam with both the sides fixed, and it acts as a uniformly distributed loaded beam, UDL beam, uniformly loaded beam with both ends fixed. And if we consider the length between the fixed ends as L, then L can be written as pi d by n, where d is the diameter or r is the radius of the flywheel. So we can write the expression as L is equal to 2 pi r by n. So if n is the number of arms, then we can write it as 2 pi r by n. So this is the case of a flywheel where it has arms. In case of a web section, it is difficult to find out using this expression, but in the case of flywheel with arms or arm structures, we can write n as the number of arms. Now we know the expression for the uniformly distributed load, UDL, uniformly distributed load per unit length if it is represented by W, it can be given by the expression as B into T into rho into omega squared into R. Now B into T represents the area. If we are assuming the arms to be rectangular cross section, B is the width and T is the thickness, then we can see that B into T represents the area. So B into T, area into density into omega squared R gives you the load per unit length W. Now if you write the expression for the maximum bending moment, W L square by 12 will be the expression for maximum bending moment for a uniformly distributed load, which is fixed at both the ends. So W L square by 12, we substitute the value of W in this equation. So we get BT rho omega squared into R by 12 into the L value, we take it from this expression, that is 2 pi R by N. So 2 pi R by N the whole square, because it is L square. So W is B into T into rho omega squared R by 12 into L square, that is 2 pi R by N the whole square. Now bending stress is given by the equation the bending moment by the section modulus Z. FB is equal to M by Z. Now section modulus for the section can be given by 1 by 6 into BT square. So we can substitute that in the equation to find out the bending stress. M value we have obtained in here in this equation, BT rho omega squared R by 12 into 2 pi R by N the whole square into or divided by section modulus Z is equal to 1 by 6 BT square. So this expression by Z will result in this particular equation. So we can again simplify this equation, write the value of pi as 3.14 etc. T and T will get cancelled. So after cancellation and simplification, we will get the value as 19.74 into rho V squared R. So we get R into R square into omega cube in this expression. So we know that V is equal to R omega. So omega squared R square we can write it as V squared, and one more R will be remaining. So that is why it comes as V squared R. So 19.74 into rho into V squared R by N squared T. So that will be the simplified expression for bending stress. So we have the tensile stress acting on the flywheel as well as the tensile bending stress FB also acting on the flywheel. So the total stress acting on the flywheel will be a combination of the tensile stress and the tensile bending stress given by this equation. The total stress F is equal to Ft, that is the tensile stress, plus the tensile bending stress Fb. So these two will be the stresses that are acting on the flywheel. So with that we have completed the different topics or the portions related with the flywheel. In the next class we will be doing certain simple problems related to fluctuation of energy and stresses that are occurring on the flywheel. Thank you.